Welcome to In Search of the Truth. I'm Adel van Niekerk, right? In this episode 3, we're still looking at some of the suspects and the possible perpetrators in the murders of Dr. Robert Smit and his wife Jean in November 1977 in South Africa. And we're also going to talk a bit about what the motive could have been for the murders and who the people could have been who gave the instructions for these murders. I'm still talking to Lisa Smit, their daughter, who was at my side as we were investigating for the past 31 years. One of the other names that came up, we've so far said Roy Allen, Jack Widdowson, and Dries Verwey. He was in boss, and then he became the first commander of the first unit that was started to be like anti-terrorism and do all kinds of things, a specialist unit for the police. And several people we spoke to pointed fingers at him. We know that Osie did, and Smit did, and Roy Allen said he believed he could have. I'm not pointing fingers, but he could have. That was Roy Allen, as you remember. We couldn't talk to him because he died in 1980 already, remember?
Yeah.
There were a lot of rumors that he'd been taken out. People claimed that he died from a gunshot wound and that he was shot and killed and that it was made to look like suicide. His wife later years, about 10 years ago, gave another statement to the newspapers to say heart attack.
Yeah.
Yes, that it was a heart attack because that's what his death certificate said. But the rumor was that they said it was a heart attack for the, official reasons.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we're allowed to say that.
For official reasons.
Yeah.
But I recently heard from a very top police source who said to me, former general claimed he was taken out because he talked too much. Because apparently he was always drinking a lot. And after the murders, he started drinking very heavily. Those were the allegations that were made. His nickname was Dries Krullenbol Verwey, as we said. Krullenbol means curly top, somebody with very curly hair. And it was actually a joke because he was bald.
Yeah.
No hair. Yeah, no hair at all. Typical sense of humor of these guys. And he left the police. I don't know where he went. People said to me he went to Boss, but it was before the time of Boss. It was like early 60s, 61, 62. And then 2 or 3 years later, he came back. But he was demoted from a brigadier to colonel. So what happened, I don't know. Where he went and what he did. But he came back to the police. And then in 76, he became the first commander of the task force. According to Henny Biocus, another former task force member we spoke to, he himself, Verwey, Jack Widdowson and Roy Allen were part of the inner circle, Verwey's inner circle. They were very close-knit unit. That's what he said. And Smit, as we said, the guy we spoke about that you and I also spoke to, he was he's driving. We don't know a lot more about Dries Verwey, except that he was apparently very efficient. Freeman was an interesting case. He was born in the UK. He fought in the Second World War. He was a lot older than these guys. And he came to South Africa, stayed, and he joined the police, and he ended up in Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, and he fought in the war there. And then he joined BOSS also, the Bureau of State Security, or BFSS. And he was the technical head of BOSS, according to Roy Allen, and he was very close to Hinder van der Berg. Freeman, the impression I get from what people have told me is that he was a soldier. There's a huge difference, I think, between police and military. You could see their military background, they had that discipline. The way, remember how I spoke to Roy about all the mistakes that he'd made?
Yes.
And so he came to South Africa, and he was also a weapons, explosives, and electronics expert. Roy Allen spoke a lot about eavesdropping and things, how he could do things and hide eavesdropping equipment, where they were even eavesdropping on the CIA guys at one stage who came to South Africa before meeting, or some top American people before meeting with the Prime Minister, and they had double set one so that once they found the first lot, there was a second lot that was still running. So he was very good at his job apparently. And as we said earlier on, he was the bodyguard on the ship apparently when you guys came back. Can you remember that at all?
No.
Anything of bodyguards or people there?
Not at all.
And
I just know we were never allowed to go out on the ship alone. Robert had a man assigned to him, and I had a woman assigned to me if we weren't together.
and you didn't realize they were
No.
bodyguards, but you were too young. How old were
But
you?
I thought they were people that worked on the ship. You see, so
You said it was 75. How old were you then? 11?
yeah.
11. It's very young. So, Paul retired and he moved to France in 1977, but before the murders, he and his wife, and it was his second wife, and it was actually a love story. Remember, they told us the story about his love story that he met this woman, Jean, when years ago they both worked for Boss, and she also had top security clearance like him. And that they fell in love, but because he was married and had kids, he decided he's going to stay with his wife. And as soon as his kids left school, he divorced her, and he and Jean got together. And until he died, they were apparently madly in love, always. But now this is interesting because I went to Cape Town with another journalist, a British journalist, and we went to see his wife. It was 2 years after his death. It was in 97. He died in 95. And she was a tiny little woman. And she told us the same story that she told the police, that he had died in a shooting accident, that he had heard something outside. They lived in Simonstown, the Cape. And I remember their backyard, their property was like, it was on a corner, but it was like this, like almost a triangle. And it was a small yard. And he'd heard a sound and he went outside and he had his gun on him and he tripped over the dog. I saw the dog. It was a big fat Labrador. And he tripped over the dog and he accidentally shot himself, which apparently wasn't true, is what they say. I saw the picture of his head and he was shot here, there, just sort of behind and above the right ear. It later came out from several sources, more than one said that he had actually committed suicide because he had cancer, he was in remission, and the cancer had come back and it was very bad, and that he actually decided to commit suicide. That's the story. We don't know.
And that his wife was with him, I believe.
That's what they claim, but we don't know. As I say, these were all allegations. But when I went to see her, she was adamant that he couldn't have been involved in the murders because they were in France, living in France at the time. And it's interesting because Roy Allen kept on dragging him in, but Roy must have known he was in France, okay? And he could have been in South Africa because remember the TRC, I think it was the Attorney General's office or the TRC, somebody told us that they were investigating the possibility of him having come back to South Africa by boat or something. But remember, his pseudonym and boss was MacDougall, and that he had a passport, a fake passport, state issued in the name MacDougall. So he could easily have come back without anyone knowing. But we don't know, there's no proof of that. But we can't even place him in South Africa, let alone in Springs and let alone in the murder house. But what was very interesting is that we heard from more than one source, it was also in the newspapers, that he had ordered 2 stiletto knives that were delivered at a Western Cape police station 2 weeks ahead of the murders. Now, that doesn't make sense to me. If you live in France,
why would you order?
You order knives from Italy. It's close together. Why post it to South Africa unless it's needed in South Africa? And if he had ordered it for a friend, wouldn't he have sent it to the friend's home?
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense. He left it at the police station. Apparently another policeman came to pick it up. I don't know who yet, and I don't know what happened to the knives afterwards. But it's possible, I'm not saying it is the case, it's possible that those knives could have been ordered for the murders.
Yeah.
Which would implicate, that they had instructions to do the stabbings. What do you think? Which would imply.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, it's the first time you've actually asked me that, and
it makes sense, eh?
Yeah, I've always thought that the stabbings was like an afterthought while waiting for my father to get home.
If these knives were ordered for that, and that makes me think both your parents were stabbed in the back. Your father was turned so they could stab him in the back. Stabbing someone in the back, maybe a message to say, you stabbed us in the back by wanting to expose our stuff. This is what happens to people who stab us in the back, who stab you in the back.
Yeah.
Do you think it's possible?
Very much so. I actually think the stabbings is a very large message, a loud message.
So, and freedom, according to Roy Allen, was very anti-communist and especially anti-Russia. And if they told him your father was a spy or a Russian, or he wouldn't have thought about it twice, they say. So, yeah, he died in 95. Couldn't talk to him, spoke to his wife. And he was really a weapons expert. He made like miniature weapons and miniature cannons. We were told that, and I actually saw them.
Scale that could work, could operate.
They actually operated like the real thing. And I saw that in his house. They were there on display. And I heard, but that was the thing, a lot of people did in Rhodesia. Maybe he picked up the skill there. I don't know. But he could do that. He was very highly skilled. Roy Allen claimed at one stage that he ran into a former security policeman who was part of the technical team. And that this guy said to him that Phil Freeman at one stage had remorse for his involvement in the murders. Not that he had killed them, involvement, there's a difference, choice of words.
Yeah, there's a big difference.
And that he was going to confess and that he wanted to go to his member of parliament for where he lived. He lived in Simonstown. And the member of parliament who represented Simonstown was John Wiley. And John Wiley committed suicide, I think it was in 86. And he did it before Freeman apparently could talk to him. And that was in the time when all these allegations about pedophilia and Bird Island and all that came out. So Freeman never spoke to Wiley. If it's true, it's once again hearsay. Everything's hearsay. But his name came up early. I actually would like to refer here to a newspaper article. Just want to grab my glasses. An article that by Tony Sterling. Remember Tony Sterling? We spoke to him as well. He died not long after he'd spoken to him. He's a very good journalist. He already wrote in 1991. He said, we received a tip-off from a Rhodesian military intelligence of the appropriate date on which the man was expected to lead a hand. And he was talking about the Z Squad. A group included the Star's information was led by an agent who used the alias of MacDougall. That's Freeman. And then they say also here that this MacDougall was highly trained commander veteran of the World War II, and that he was an expert in guns, explosives, exactly. And he worked with General van der Berg. They said that MacDougall, in their opinion, was most probably the most dangerous man they sourced that he'd ever met. And that he was part of the Z Squad, according to this article. And they claim also that the Z Squad was the hit squad for Boss. He did not speak Afrikaans, and we cannot place him in Springs. And I don't think he could have made that phone call. He was also very close to Van Band, as I said. And the third man that was mentioned was Jack Widdowson. We also never managed to find him. There's a lot of contradictory information about Widdowson. There's some people who say that he was very dangerous. Others say he was Mickey Mouse. Okay, he was lightweight. He couldn't have been involved. We didn't manage to trace him. Wissie was one of the sources, and Joop Smit, who implicated him in the thing. He was a collector of knives and daggers. Not that tells you much, because a lot of guys were. It's what they do for a living. Connect knives, guns, whatever, it's what they did. He grew up in Giza in Egypt, where his father was the consul general. His father was in the diplomatic corps, and he traveled quite a lot, and apparently he spoke several languages, also Italian, but not Afrikaans. He didn't speak Afrikaans either, so he also couldn't have made the call. Dirk Coetzee was also a former policeman, told us also that Roy and Widdowson were very good friends, and they were confidants of Verwey, that inner circle thing. And that Verwey was a confidant of Van den Berg, and Van den Berg was close to Foster. Van den Berg was an advisor to Foster, and he reported directly to him when he was the head of BOS. So that is also interesting. There were rumors that Widdowson's girlfriend had been murdered, but the story I later heard is that she did not, that after he'd broken off the engagement for a third time, because she was the daughter of a policeman. She was daughter of a policeman, and his father, who was a diplomat, didn't think she was good enough for his son. So there was pressure. So she committed suicide, and shame, she had a son, apparently he was very young when she committed suicide, and he came to the police station and told them they must come see his mom doesn't want to wake up. It was alleged that he was the photographer of the task force. Don't know. And we know that Henny Biocus said on the night of the murders he saw Jack Widdowson and Roy Allen in one car, and it's cars from the task force. They signed the cars out, and that Dries Verwey and another person was in the other car, and they left. And that he later figured out it must have been Springs because of what happened that night.
Yeah.
And they were different when they came back, he said. Funny enough. So, yeah, that was the thing. So Widdowson, he also served in Rhodesia. He was also one of the first intake of the task force. And he left the police and the task force in 1978. It was not long, almost a year after the murders. And he left the police completely. He went fishing, worked for a company that employed him. It was a deep sea trawling company. He went to work for them. And he was there for about 3 years, and then he ran into Roy Allen, who said to him, come work for military intelligence, because he was now with military intelligence. And then Widdowson joined military intelligence, but he joined Navy intelligence.
Okay.
So that's where he went. And they were very close friends. They were such good friends that that Roy kept on saying that he believes that Widdowson was only accused because of his association with him, Roy, because Roy was implicated and then they dragged in, but not from the information I've got. And then we get to Henny Biocus. Henny Biocus was also a former task force member. And he, I had an appointment to go see him because remember Roy gave me his name and number, and he was the brother of that general, and he was the one who was the helmet robber. So I made an appointment, but I couldn't make the appointment anymore, and I wanted to postpone, and he said, no, we'll talk on the phone. And he didn't really want to talk a lot. He basically just said that they were part of the inner circle, and if any of these guys had been involved in the murders, he would have known because he was part of the inner circle. But we know that he was telling others about seeing them driving off that night. So he lied.
But I also saw him.
Yes, I'm going to get to that now. He, I tried to get hold of him and I couldn't. I went to his wife, had a takeaway burger restaurant, hamburger in Pretoria. I went there, he wasn't there. And then it was the day before we had to hand in the TRC thing. You and the advocate who was going to hand in the presentation that you and I put together, he said, you could see him and you met with him. And what happened?
Yeah, you and I have actually a difference of opinion of him. My experience, I was scared of this guy.
Very scared.
I was really very scared of this guy. He said to me in Afrikaans, ons het gemoedsrus. What is that in English?
Peace of mind.
We have peace of mind. And he said to me, do you know what that is? And I said to him, no. And then he made a financial offer.
Millions.
6 million. He said they would give us 6 million, but we are not to submit our TRC submission. And his name must not be mentioned there, because then everything will be over. When we asked him about the murder, when I asked him about the murders, if he knows anything, or he also said, he also just heard rumors. He says it was professional. He said, but the person that did the stabbing, he said to me, that's a pretty fucked up person. Those were his words. And he still said to me, I dare you, there's a dead dog that was hit by a car and the dog's dead. Go to that dog and take a knife and see if you can puncture that dog 14 times. See if you can do that. He said that person that did that to your mother was pretty fucked up. And he really had me scared. You weren't scared of him.
Mm.
I was. So it was, to me, I wouldn't name him. I made him Mr. X because I really feared that he would do something to me.
But he then took you to another venue, you and your advocate.
But Roy Allen. But we didn't really, nothing meaningful came there.
But you sat down and you chatted with Roy or not?
Yeah, we did, but I can't remember that anything came from that.
You remember you phoned me and you said you guys were just chatting then when you joined Roy. But you realize that Roy later years told others a different story. He told people that he was in this restaurant where he always went and Henny Biocus walked in with you and that he didn't want to talk to Smit's daughter and he got up and he ran away.
No, he's lying.
Yes.
No, he's lying about that because that was already planned that we would go there.
And see Roy. He lied quite a bit.
Yeah, that's what Henny said. When we're done here, we're going there, you know. And that's exactly what we did. Roy knew that.
Yeah. But Henny Biocus is now also departed. And what we also found out about him is that he was, in the early 80s, he was the helmet robber. And he robbed banks with his helmet. But what's interesting is he got a sentence of 32 years imprisonment, suspended for, I think it was 26 years. He sat for 4 years and then he came out. After you've received a sentence of 32 years? Isn't that strange? But in any case, so he came out. And he's the one, as I said, who saw the cars leaving from the offices of the task force. And then also during the time when he was charged in the early 80s with this armed robbery, we heard that he had made a tape recording of what he said he deducted and he assumed and he sort of put together of what had happened with the murders because he knows the guys and what he saw and whatever. He wasn't involved, and that he'd given it to his advocate, who was Advocate Willem Heath, who later became a judge. And until today, we don't know what's happened to that tape and whether anyone has actually listened to it. We don't know.
If it still exists.
Yes. And he gave them permission to actually listen to the tape. We don't know. And apparently while he was on trial, the second day in Durban, the court case was in Durban, Smit arrived, Verwey's driver. And Henny said that it made him very nervous because he wasn't a close friend of his. Joop said he was there for moral support, but he and Joop were never close. So why was he there? He felt that it was like almost an intrusion. And there was another source that claimed that they used to get together. It was also sometime in the 90s when Widdowson came up from Cape Town, because he was in Cape Town, he'd come here. And then that Widdowson, Roy Allen, and Henny Biocus would meet for drinks, and this person was obviously also there as a witness, and that they would discuss the task force days, and that Jack Widdowson at some stage said, "Don't worry, I've destroyed everything." And we don't know what he meant. Was he the photographer? Is it photographs or what? And there were also allegations that Henny claimed he was somehow involved in the murders. I don't know if it is because of his knowledge or what, because otherwise we couldn't link him to the murders as such, more as a witness. But he died. He died also, I think it was before 2020. I remember he also said to you, you told me, dust to dust, carry on with your life.
Yeah, that's when he made the offer. And he said to me, I'm wasting my life.
Carry on with your life. And he said if you added his name to your submission, everything would be over.
Yeah. And that scared me. He scared me.
And he also said everybody knows what happened, but they'll never talk.
Yeah. And just the way that the way he was. I mean, I saw a lot of people, not even van der Berg. I experienced the fear that that man bestowed on me. Really, I was very scared of Henny Biocus.
And
Even my advocate agreed.
that he was scary.
Well, we've got questions there as well,
But he also claimed that Van den Berg was not involved in the murders, but in the cover-up.
yeah.
He claimed that the order came from Pik Botha, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, went to Mike Geldnys, who was, I think, then the head of the security branch. He was a general.
I think so, yeah.
And then to Verwey, and then to the other guys. We could never confirm this is just allegations. It could be anything, because other ministers have also been implicated and no one knows. There's no proof of anything, not a shred of proof. So we don't know until today. The last one I just want to quickly refer to is Mark Benza, because he was the first suspect the police had. Mark Benza, shortly after the murders, he was a Czech from Czechoslovakia, a citizen, but he had a Canadian passport, Czech Canadian. And he was in South Africa, and he wanted to start a solar business. And he was introduced to your father about a month before the murders by Emerensha Liebenberg. Emerensha, I think her dead husband was close to your father, weren't they? They did business or something together. They knew each other. And when he died, she phoned your father and asked him to help her with the will or the finance or the something.
Yeah, I remember something like that.
And then they became very good friends. And then she introduced your father to Benza, because she lived in a block of flats that was in Hillbrow in those days. It was a huge round, it was like a round Ponty building. Yeah. Today it's dilapidated and everything, but those days it was like quite a nice block of flats. A lot of suicides there, funny enough. But she lived there and Benza lived there, and she knew Benza, and she introduced Benza to your father, and to talk about solar energy. And they lived in that building, and Benza's fingerprints were taken. It didn't match the fingerprints. They still had it then. It was shortly after the murders. So they allowed him to leave the country, which I found strange, because even if your fingerprints are there, you could have been involved, an accomplice in some other way. I don't know, but they allowed him to leave. And then in 1997, we spoke to Pik Botha, another former policeman. I don't know if you remember. He was involved in the investigation for about 2 years. Remember, we went to that hospital in Brixton, Garden City, ne? Is it Garden City?
Yeah, I think it is.
Because he was there with a gunshot wound. Apparently, one of his business associates accidentally shot him in the leg. So I still thought it was funny. He was there and he spoke to us, and he told us he was investigating, and he was told about these documents that had been found in Ponty building, and it was related to the Smit murders, and that he informed the investigators at the time, because he wanted them to get a search warrant or something so that they could go fetch these documents, and he never got it. He was stopped and he was blocked, and as far as he knows, that nobody ever went. And I wonder what these documents were. We don't know. And we don't know. It's just interesting coincidence that Emerensha Liebenberg and Benza lived there.
Yeah.
And if they'd found those documents, if they were looking at Benza, it could have been Benza's flat.
But who had the documents?
They didn't say. And those documents are gone. And then Piet was taken off the case. And they never looked at those documents. And we don't know, but I thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
Could have maybe be linked to Benza.
That would be more around a motive, I'd say.
Yes, exactly what I thought.
Yeah.
Now, okay, if we've now looked at the main 4 suspects mentioned by the Truth Commission and the police was Dries Verwey, Roy Allen, Jack Widdowson, and Phil Freeman. Jerry Raven never featured again. I don't think he was involved. Phil Freeman. Still don't know if these guys were involved, because everybody there's something. Phil Freeman was overseas. Roy Allen passed the polygraph test. Widdowson apparently was not tough enough to have done it. And Dries Verwey, well, we don't know much about him. So it's interesting, though, that in one of these emails that Roy wrote to so many people, and his email address was RAU TEM, like you say, he said he believed that the murders would never be solved. And he said the reasons were twofold. The first, that it was a perfect murder executed by professionals. Sounds a bit like bragging, but in any case. And he said that all the perpetrators were dead, and he was implying that Dries Verwey and Freeman could have committed the murders, and they were both dead at the time already when he said this. And Roy then gave his theory, and he said he believed that the persons mentioned were in all probability the perpetrators of the murders. And by association, he says his name was dragged in because he was very friendly with Verwey and Freeman. He knew them well. His name was dragged in, he claimed. And then he said Widdowson's name was dragged in because of his associated with Roy. It's difficult. I don't think we'll ever know, but I think if we look at everything on the table, there's a possibility that somehow some of these people could have been involved. Necessarily pulled the trigger or killed them, but could have been involved.
As in after the murders?
No, I think sweepers maybe, the paint, making the phone call, getting the knives. They could have. We don't know. But there's just too many coincidences for me to just say it's nothing. Then the Truth Commission, after years, came with their findings. It was interesting. They said that there's been persistent allegations that the killings had been carried out by members of the security forces. Several motives have been mentioned. That your father uncovered massive corruption and fraud, that he involving extremely high-level people, and that he also, it could have been information about South Africa's nuclear weapon program. Yeah, when South Africa, you can hear the ibis, the Hadidas, in Joburg especially. And then other one was sanction busting. And it's funny that that was the one thing that Roy mentioned, also yes. Sanction busting. And they said the information your father had and was going to explode was explosive. They said that there were also allegations of the Z Squad and the task team, the special task teams, and 3 names came up. Dries Verwey, Jack Widdowson, Roy Allen repeatedly came up. And then there was obviously also the name of Freeman because of his nickname, MacDougall, or his pseudonym he used. And there were 2 independent sources, they say, that saw Widdowson and Allen leaving for Springs that night. And like you say, Allen admitted to you that he was in Springs that night. And then they also said no one had applied for amnesty for these killings. And then they say that, talk about your investigation and that you had death threats and possible attempts on your life, and that the facts surrounding the killings remain hidden. It points to a political agenda, or at least one, in which powerful, possibly financial interests are vested. They say their investigation confirmed a politically motivated killing involving the security forces. So they said they find that Robert and Jean Smit were killed by members of the security forces and that their deaths constitute a gross violation of human rights. And that was the end. And then it was taken over later years by this unit that had to look at the TRC's unsolved cases, and they've now also closed the case. So if we look at motive, we've got to look at what your father's job was, and there's very little known about it. He worked for when he came back from America, and obviously we've heard several times that he found something in America. In one of my next episodes, I'm going to talk to the American journalist Joe Trento, and author, who also had information that he received, he said, from the CIA about these murders. But he was in South Africa and he worked for Santam International. We believe it was a front company. But what I find so very strange is when he was approached, he had a meeting with Dr. van Aswegen, who was the chairman of Santam International in, where was it, New York?
Yeah.
Yes. And they made him an offer and he accepted it and he became the managing director of Santam International.
He did ask to come back to South Africa.
Yes, he did, but then he found this job and he accepted their offer.
They offered him another job that he didn't want.
Yes, and then this one.
Yeah.
And it's interesting is that Van Aswegen was the chairman, your father was the managing director. And of the shareholding, only your father and Van Aswegen were individuals who had shares in Santam International. All the others were banks. Okay.
Yes.
Now, you spoke to Charles Ferreira to find out what your father's work entailed. And he said that your father had to organize credit lines. And he said he did not know what your father had uncovered, and he didn't know what your father was doing because he was only...
I found it very strange because at that time I didn't know who Ferreira was. I didn't really know him when I spoke to him. But later on in years, I heard that he was a pallbearer. He asked to be a pallbearer at the
funeral.
So he and my father must have been very close. He must have known exactly what my father knew. He apparently got very scared, according to...
Bought a gun.
Yes. After the murders, he walked around with a gun in the office.
Yeah.
And I think it's because he knew. He knew certain things that he wasn't supposed to know.
And everyone was too scared to talk. Yeah, it's very interesting that... And then what I found most strange was Van Aswegen, and he was the chairman who claimed to have had no idea of what your father's work entailed.
Didn't really know
And
him.
he was the chairman, and he was the one who recruited your father. And he was also on the board of Armscore. He manufactured, arms manufacturer of South Africa. He knew nothing. What did he say?
And
Can
he
you
also
remember?
said he didn't really know my father. He saw him in the hall when they passed each other.
Well, he was based in Cape Town. Your father was based in Joburg, but your father flew to Cape Town a lot.
I was just going to say, and you can't say he didn't know him. They were part of the
inner
board.
circle of their job. Yeah, I find it very strange. And what's even stranger is when you spoke to Ina, who was your father's secretary, is that she also said she only knew about the case where it did arbitration between Alusaf and the arbitration panel of the International Chamber of Commerce in France. But
in that year. In
yes, she didn't
77,
quite
yeah.
know, but I mean, you can understand it. It was not her job to know. But what was most interesting is that she said after your parents' death, oh no, she said she wasn't sure whether it was actually the day before the deaths or on the day of the deaths. She found a letter, a document on your father's desk, and it was a letter notifying him that his services at Santam International had been ended. And that was contradictory to a letter we had.
Yeah, no.
And this is very strange. And she said it was strange to her.
But remember, there was also a time where they called my father in and said he had to give up his shares.
Yes, they wanted it because the others were unhappy that they didn't
Yeah.
have shares.
Yes.
I remember that.
And my father was unhappy about that because that was part of the packet that they offered him.
She was very surprised when you told her that Van Aswegen and Ferreira said they didn't know what your father's job entailed.
Yeah,
I find it all very strange.
that letter that she's talking about, that she also said that was the first time she's spoken about that.
Yes.
Nowhere ever has that letter
No one has said
surfaced
anything
or-
that your father was basically fired.
Yeah, but is it true?
Why would she lie? Especially her.
Yeah, but I mean, then there must be some other evidence or something. We've got
Strange
contradictive
information.
Yeah. So it's strange that she comes and she says that. Why would they have done that? They wouldn't have done that.
She also mentioned that in the run-up to the murders, your father had several meetings with the Minister of Information, Connie Mulder,
Yeah.
and that it was entered into his diary. And this was confirmed by Dawn Lottering, who also said when she looked at the diary, there was at least one not long before the murders, a meeting.
Where
With-
did she have a look at the diary?
She said she went to the offices at some stage, Santam International, because she lived not far from there. That's what she told us.
Where is this diary?
With the police. Some claimed the police never took the diaries. Others said they did take the diaries. No one knows. But it's interesting, and I've also...
It should have been taken if McDougall was written in the diary as evidence.
Yes, it was there. But what's interesting also is this whole thing about Connie Mulder. Because we don't know whether his appointments with Connie Mulder was because of what people in Connie Mulder's department were doing. because your father told his brother that he didn't think Connie Mulder knew exactly what's going on in his department. And he could have been talking to him about that. It doesn't necessarily mean he implicated Connie Mulder. We don't know. But he had several meetings apparently with Connie Mulder. And what's even more interesting, this journalist who was in the house, Gordon Winter, who was actually a boss agent, and I contacted him in 1997 and I spoke to him in 97, 98. I don't know how I contacted him. I can't remember. There was no Google, nothing. I found him and we started writing letters, remember, to the, between me and him. And in the letters, he mainly spoke about Connie Mulder. And he asked me whether Connie Mulder was alive. He asked us a lot about Connie Mulder. And then at one stage, he decided he's not talking to us anymore. But I found that interesting also that he referred to Connie Mulder. So
But he was part of the
boss circle, yes.
Yeah, but also the info scandal.
Yes, he was. He lost his job.
Yeah.
But the thing is, what I don't understand is that Gordon Winter, it's alleged that he spoke a lot of nonsense as well, because apparently he was fed nonsense to spread disinformation as well. And now they claim the whole thing about the Z Squad was also disinformation. I don't think so.
No.
Not if some very senior operators have told me personally
Of the existence of,
of the
Z,
existence
yeah.
of the Z Squad. Any case, that's how far we got. And you and I received threats. You received a lot of threats with telephone calls, anonymous, a lot of older men, hey, Afrikaans older men. And they fiddled with the brakes of your cars. They took something out, and that actually freaked me out now that I'm old. Those days I thought, oh, well, you know, now I'm thinking you could have died because your car's brakes failed.
Exactly. At that time, we didn't look at it like that.
No.
I mean, I stayed on a
Small holding.
Yeah, and I thought, why are you doing this? It's so easy to get to me, you know?
Yeah.
I'm far away, and it actually made me say, come. What else can you bring? But like you say, if we look at it now, how serious the things were they did.
Yeah.
I mean, when they cut the electric blanket, who was it? Was it Effort or who was it?
I brought somebody to a house and we looked at it. It was definitely cut.
Yeah, it was cut. Because I woke up of a zzz, zzz, zzz.
A short.
Yeah, and I looked and I saw something going on in the bed. And I think I was too naive to get scared. You know, I wasn't scared of it. I was just like, what's this, you know? But when they cut the telephone lines, that's when the TRC said no.
And they put you in witness protection for a week.
Yeah, if I don't stop now, if I don't go.
And then after a week you came back because you refused to stay there.
Yeah, when I was there for a week, I realized they got me out the way. That's exactly what they wanted. They wanted us to stop.
And they got into your house, and on all the family photos on the walls, they put red crosses over your face.
Yeah, I forgot about that. My daughter reminded me of that. She was actually the one that saw it.
And the listening device that was found on the ceiling of your house was also quite scary. I also had some threats, but at one stage they started telling you to tell me that I was going to fall through the ice. Yeah. And then one day they rocked up at my house. I didn't even know they knew where I lived. They just rocked up and said, we're taking you away for witness protection. My husband said, no way. He said, I don't trust the people you use because we don't know where their loyalty lies. They're all former policemen. Are they linked to the old guard or the new guard? He said, you could put the people there who are actually keeping tabs on her. So I will look after her. But it was quite a scare. I didn't feel scared at the time.
I didn't either.
I think looking back now, I think we should have been, but we weren't. We were stupid.
Yeah, naive. But remember what my goal was. My goal wasn't to find the person that pulled the trigger. Not from the beginning, not never.
The instruction.
I wanted to find out who gave the instruction from the person that pulled the trigger. Because I wanted to climb up to the motive. And then we got so caught up with these people, these actually dangerous people.
Yes, they were dangerous people. That's what I mean. We were swimming on the periphery of a very dangerous world and we didn't realize it. Looking back now, I mean, there's a lot more. We saw a lot more people. We can't talk about it all. It's too much. We'll probably take hours and hours to talk about everything. But this is the gist of the story and the people that have been implicated. Looking back now and realizing you'd spent all this time you could have spent with your family or with friends or whatever, and you've done all of this, and now you've been told basically, listen, it's highly unlikely that they'll ever investigate the case again. Do you think it was worth it?
Yes, I do. Because I would have always wanted to know. I always needed to know why. I wanted the why, because from the very beginning there were stories that my father he uncovered something and he would have gone public with this, but not just in South Africa, worldwide. Because he was worldwide known in the banking industry, the top bankers in the world. So it had to be something. But the motives, we didn't touch on that, and you're going to probably be talking about that, but it was oil, it was nuclear
weapons. Yes. And then, of course, the money. There were also allegations that some people took commissions on deals that they did for government, illegal commissions.
Yes.
So
that was weapons, oil.
And corruption.
Yeah. That's actually where I wanted to go, but I'm not clever enough to get to those type of people to get to the answer. But to answer you, I'm glad I did that, because I know that I tried everything from my side to find the truth. I wanted the truth, but I've already realized many years ago that it's never gonna. Long ago, I think when I did my book, when I actually sat down and wrote my book, I realized that this is never coming out. This is something, it's one of the best kept secrets. I don't know why. My opinions have changed from the time that we did the TRC thing, of the motive.
I'm convinced RAU TEM is that island now, because there were all kinds of other explanations about it being Hebrew and that it meant something. I'm convinced it refers to that island. There were too many people who spoke about this.
Yes, and they confirmed that it did belong to RAU.
Yeah.
I'm more inclined to think now that the people that were responsible for these murders were a handful of people. It wasn't the whole cabinet or the whole government or the whole National Party. It was a handful of people
whose interests were at stake.
That my father found out, and that was a very, very loud message, what they did to them.
But then it goes back.
That's why nobody else knows.
But that goes back to Brigadier Wies's words, that by solving this murder you would have to, and I think you're right, that this handful of people, whatever they'd been doing, if he had to expose that, he would have had to expose
a much bigger.
Well, the secret deals of the government in a time of an arms embargo and an oil embargo. And I think that was the thing why it couldn't be released. Exactly what Brigadier Wies said, that's the crux of the matter. State secrets would have to be revealed.
Yeah, and it wasn't everybody that was in on it. It was just a handful of people.
I agree.
And I think that's why my father and my mother, because my mother, remember, she stopped at her sister's house that Friday before the murders on her way back from Springs to get us, or to come to us, and she was shaking, and she asked her, just throw me a brandy. And my aunt still said to her, Jean, what is fout? And she said, I can't tell you. I just can't tell you. Just pour me a brandy. So it was, I don't think it's something that everyone knew. It was something very
specific,
explosive, that only a few people was aware of. And I agree with you, if that would become public, it would have opened up a can of worms that would have...
Other secrets. And the problem is, of course, why it's also not going to be resolved is all the documents. I spoke to someone recently again who told me, and I've heard it from several people, arms corps, military, police, house documents were shredded and burnt before the apartheid came to an end and before the new South Africa started. They burned documents because they didn't want the new government to get hold of it. In fact, I was told these incinerators were working so hard that they could have run out of diesel day and night, of how they were burning documents and shredding documents. And I think a lot of it's been destroyed. I don't think there's hard evidence.
No, I don't think anybody's alive anymore, as a matter of fact, as well.
Well, there are
Not-
some, but not many.
The operators would have been the last ones that were alive, I think.
There are still a few people who could
But
know.
the people in the government,
No.
none of them are alive anymore, you know.
No,
Or the people that were alive had to do with a motive.
they're not alive.
Yeah, but that's, you see, so we'll never find out.
But in my following episodes, I'm going to talk to Joe Trento about what the Americans said and about the possibility of foreigners being used. But they would have had to have help from South African operators as well. It couldn't have just been foreign assassins. They would have had support. And about a motive there, about possibility of American senators being paid off. I found documents on that, of America, the investigations there as well. And we're going to talk to your cousin as well about his investigations into Santam International to find out what your father was actually doing. And I also want to talk to a former journalist who was a journalist at the time, and who knows a lot about the politics and the atmosphere and what was happening in the country at the time. And that's the end of episode 3. If you liked it, please click on the like button so that I can know that you enjoyed it. And if you want to see the next episode and not miss it, please subscribe. I'll be back with another episode, and this time I'm going to be talking to the American journalist and author Joe Trento about what was said in America about these murders and what he learned from his CIA sources. Until next time, goodbye.